Hello, welcome to the GED Tool Box. I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to be talking about angle relationships. We're going to be defining some words that will help you better understand some of those relationships, and then we're going to be playing around with some vertical angles, and I think you'll have some fun with that. Let's get started with our definitions. The first definition that we're going to talk about is the word congruent. Now, congruent in relationship to angles, two congruent angles would be exactly equal. They would be exactly the same. So if in a word problem somewhere they were to say which angle is congruent to angle whatever, you would know that you were looking for an angle that is precisely the same measurement, not anything different. The next definition that we're going to look at is the word complementary. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees. Now that should look familiar to you because we've talked about right angles before, right? And a right angle is very familiar. It looks like that. But now we're talking about complementary angles. So we're talking about two angles that add up to 90 degrees, not just one. So complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. More good information. The third definition I want you to know about is supplementary. Now, supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. And again, that should look familiar. We've talked about straight angles before, and straight angles look suspiciously like a straight line. But now we're talking about two angles that add up to 180 degrees. Now, the reason this is important information to note and to know these definitions is that if you knew the measurement of one angle, you could figure out the measurement of the second angle. If you knew it was supplementary, you would simply do some second grade math, subtract 60 from 180, and voila, you'd come up with 120 degrees. Same with complementary. If you knew the measurement of one of those angles, you could figure out the measurement of the other one. It's really not rocket science when it comes to that, is it? No, it's second grade math all the way. But before we leave this screen, I want to let you take a look at the two words complementary and supplementary. Let's make some observations about those. Some people have got brilliant minds and they can just memorize that complementary angles are equal to 90 degrees and supplementary angles are equal to 180 degrees, and I think that is so amazing and wonderful. But I have to play some mind games with myself and figure out what is what sometimes. And this is what I have come up with, that complementary and supplementary are in alphabetical order. They're also in numerical order. If you will look at the first letters of these words, C comes before S in the alphabet, so if we were to alphabetize them, they would be in that order. But if we were to put them in numeric order, they would also be in the same order. The complementary angles are equal to the lesser amount. Complementary angles are equal to 90 degrees, and supplementary angles, which would come later on in the alphabet, are equal to the higher measurement, and that is 180 degrees. Just a little mind game I have to play with myself to keep myself straight. But whatever you have to do, just do it to remember those terms because they're going to be very important to you later on. The next word that we're going to define is vertical, or the next term, I guess I should say, vertical angles. And vertical angles are can be defined as angles that are formed when two lines cross. La la, that's it. We've got 4 angles there. Let's see what we can observe about them. These 4 angles, I want you to know, add up to 360 degrees, and you may have already figured that part out. Because if I put a big fat circle around that little X, I could add all those angles up and they would add up to 360 degrees. It's a complete circle. That's the first thing I want you to know about. The next thing I want you to know about is that opposite angles are equal every day, always. You can tattoo this in your brain. Opposite angles are always equal. Not just when it comes to vertical angles, but any time you have angles that are opposing each other, you can know for certain that they are equal. That's important information that you may need later on in the world. Another thing I want you to observe about these vertical angles, if I were to look from here all the way around to here, that should look suspiciously like, let's see if I can do it exactly, or almost exactly, that should look suspiciously like a set of supplementary angles, don't you think? Absolutely. And if we were to observe from here to here, from here to here, that would be the same scenario. From here to here, same scenario. And from here to here. So we could come up with different sets of supplementary angles. And interestingly, didn't we say that supplementary angles were equal to 180? Strangely, that's exactly half of 360. Very interesting. I like the way this sets up. All right, so we've got the information that opposite angles are equal, and that we've got at least that we have 2 sets of equal supplementary angles. That means that if I know the measurement of only one angle, only one, that I can figure out what all the rest of the angles are equal. I can do it one of 2 ways. I can say 60 is an acute angle that is supplementary to this larger obtuse angle. And so this angle must be equal to 120, because 120 and 160 equals 180, right? Those angles are supplementary. I could also deduce that because of that little fact I know that opposite angles are equal, that this is 120 degrees because it's opposite that, and that this one is 60 degrees because it's opposite this one, right? Absolutely. So that's an easy way to find out what all those angles are worth, or what their measurements are. Let's look at this another way too. If I know that this is 60 degrees, I could easily figure out that 60, this angle right here, is going to be 60. I know that. 60 plus 60 is 120. And I could simply subtract 120 from 360. I would get 240. And I could divide that by 2. And I would get 120, correct? So either way you do this, you're going to get the same answer. There's always more than one way to do a math problem. But the interesting facts about vertical angles are that they're formed when 2 straight lines cross, that all of the angles add up together to equal 360 degrees, that each pair of opposite angles are equal, and that each acute angle is supplementary to each obtuse angle. All of this is very predictable so far. All right, let's kick it up a notch. Let's observe some parallel lines. And before you think that I am going off the deep end and starting to talk about something completely different, I'm hoping that I can show you something that seems very familiar. Parallel lines. The definition of parallel lines: two lines that run beside each other and don't cross. And in the situation with these parallel lines, they've got little arrows on the ends of them, so that means they go on forever. So they will never cross. That's interesting information. I'm going to put a transversal through these parallel lines. Transversal simply means that there's a line drawn across them. But let's make some observations about these parallel lines and the transversal, shall we? If you look closely at these parallel lines and transversals, if I were to cut this in half right here, and just look at this up here, doesn't that look like those vertical angles we were just talking about? It should, because that's exactly what it is. And if you look at the set below, again, we've got vertical angles. We've got vertical angles. We just talked about that. But let's look at this. If I were to look at this set of vertical angles, and if I had cut it in half, remember? And I took this set of vertical angles and placed it on top of this set of vertical angles, guess what? It would fit exactly. Exactly. That's a neat observation to make. Now, thinking back to our vertical angles, we know that this angle is equal to this angle, don't we? And we know that this angle is equal to this angle. And if we were able to put this set of vertical angles on top of this set of vertical angles, we would know that this angle is equal to this angle. Let's circle it. This angle is equal to this angle. And this angle is equal to this angle. Brilliant. What this also tells us is that the opposite exterior angles are equal and the opposite interior angles are equal. Interesting. But if this scenario holds true, then we also know that this angle is equal to this angle, and we know that this angle is equal to this angle, and brilliantly, if we put this on top of this, we know that this angle is equal to this angle, and this angle is equal to this angle. Again, we see that opposite exterior angles are equal and opposite interior angles are equal. Brilliant, right? But also very predictable because we understand about the vertical angles. We understand about opposite angles. Just brilliant. Each little piece of math information that you learn is another clue that you can use to discover and end a mystery of math later on. So what we've learned so far today is that we have identified congruent angles, angles that are exactly the same. And these would be congruent angles, wouldn't they? These are congruent angles. These are congruent angles, right? Yes, congruent angles. We've learned about complementary angles, that they add up to 90 degrees, that supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. We've learned about vertical angles. We've learned about parallel lines and transversals, and that how their angles relate to one another. We've learned a lot about angle relationships. And this is information that you'll be able to use with other situations and scenarios in math. Thanks for stopping by the GED Tool Box. I hope you found something that was valuable to you today in discovering more things about math. And I also hope that you'll come back and visit us again soon and discover some more good information that you can use in your study for GED. Thank you so much.